Very warm welcome to this webinar on public-private philanthropy partnerships for people and planet, where we have the pleasure today to introduce to you a few pioneers of PPPPs, of transformative PPPPs. And I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the World Association of PPP Units and Professionals, WAPPP, and the partnering initiative TPI. My name is Max von Abendroth. I'm the chair of the Philanthropy in PPPs Forum at WAPPP. And we only started the journey of linking up philanthropy and the public and private sector a few months ago, as we see the momentum and the game-changing opportunity for innovative partnerships addressing the big challenges that humanity is facing today. I'd like to introduce to you my co-moderator, Anna Hirsch-Holland. She's the program director Funder Impact at TPI. And I'm really happy, Anna, that we can do this together here today. I also would like to welcome the speakers, but we get to this in a moment. And before going there, just a couple of housekeeping remarks. We have 60 minutes here together in this call. And as I said, there is a recording going on for this conversation. It will be made available at the YouTube channel of Next Level PPPs. That's WAPP's YouTube channel. And also we will share with all of you a solution paper summarizing the outcomes of this conversation. We have planned an extra 30 minutes at the end of the more formal part to allow for informal networking. So if you have a moment to stay with us, that would be really fantastic. Please use the chat box for any content queries that you have to the panel. We will collect questions and then in the discussion after the presentations get back to them. Also, I would like to share with you a survey in the chat in a moment. That is an opportunity for us to stay connected around this topic. And Anna will in a moment explain a bit more in detail what all this is about. Anna, over to you.
Thank you so much, Max, and thank you everyone for joining us today, and also our esteemed speakers who you'll be hearing from shortly. So I think we're all aware of the really complex and urgent challenges that the world is facing today. We know there's overlapping crises of climate breakdown, biodiversity loss, inequality, instability. I don't need to repeat those here. And I think we're also probably all agreed that this requires urgent action, but also a patience and kind of determination to collaborate across different sectors, different societal sectors, because it's only then that we can align all the different resources of the planet, natural, financial, human, and actually be able to achieve the sustainable and socially just future that I think we all agree we need. Now, this is, I suppose, a kind of a call to action, and it's definitely not a new call to action, but it's something that certainly at the Partnering Initiative, we see is just proving consistently challenging to achieve in practice. And it's this context that has brought the Partnering Initiative and WAPPP together. And I presume in some shape or form, that's why all of you are joining this session today, where we're exploring a particular kind of multi-stakeholder collaboration, one that involves the philanthropic, public and private sectors, all coming together in PPPPs, public-private philanthropy partnerships. Now, there's some ambiguity over what that means exactly, but what we are seeing is an increasing recognition about the unique role that philanthropy in particular can play in bringing together these different sectors. It can use its flexible capital, its diverse networks that span across the different sectors, and its particular technical expertise in around justice and just transition. And we see not just a recognition of these roles, but also an increasing appetite for philanthropy to play this role. And this is something that TPI and WAPPP are really keen to help develop and help this kind of collaboration to thrive and to really be able to move beyond the rhetoric and make this a widespread and effective reality. So the session today is part of a wider initiative that TPI and WAPPP are working on, where we're trying to generate evidence, understanding and pathways for action for transformative PPPPs for people and planet. And as Max already mentioned, we have shared a survey in the chat, so it'd be great if you could register your interest there, and we can make sure that you stay up to date as this work evolves. But as for today, what we're really hoping is that by hearing from different practitioners of PPPPs, what might seem perhaps quite intangible or daunting can become a more concrete and doable way forwards. So we've deliberately chosen examples and speakers representing different thematic areas and different geographic scope to hopefully illustrate the diversity in this emerging practice. And hopefully then you can also see what space you might particularly have to play in this emerging practice. So with that, I think what we'll do is open a poll so we can find out a little bit more about who we have in the room today, because I'm sure we have a very diverse crowd. So there will hopefully be a poll popping up.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. The idea of this poll is really to understand a bit who's in the room, and I think also take a bit of a temperature around your involvement in public-private philanthropy partnerships. You should be able to see now the poll question, and please scroll down because there are 3 questions in a row, and once you have filled them in all the 3, then we will just look at the results. So the first one is which sector do you mainly work in? The second one is have you personally worked in or supported a public-private philanthropy partnership? And then third one is about your confidence in understanding PPPPs. Great, so waiting for a few more answers coming in. Very good. Okay, then can you all see the results of the survey? Or is this something that still needs to be shared, Lina?
I'm not sure if we have any answers received.
Yes, I have. I can see that here.
Oh, great, perfect. Okay,
good.
Then I can unpoll right now, and I'm sharing the results.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So what we can see is that when it comes to the sector, that the majority of us here in the room has a philanthropy background, but there's also some representatives from public, private, and civil society. I see also a couple of academia, so that's really nice. Welcome to all of you. What we haven't actually checked is the geographic area you're coming from. From the registrations, we know it's really from South Korea, China, via Africa, Europe, to Latin America and the US. So thank you for those of you who are staying up late to join us here, and for those who got up very early to be here with us. Second question, your personally involvement in PPPPs. We have a bit more than half of you who have worked in PPPPs. Then 1/3 doesn't have any background in PPPPs, and some of you are not sure. So that's also interesting to find out more about that. And finally, how confident do you feel in understanding PPPPs? Well, we have a good number of people here in the room who feel very confident and confident, but also an equal number who's not very confident and not at all confident. So there is some learning opportunity between us. And yeah, without any further ado, I would say we kick that off. So thank you very much for the poll, and thank you very much for all of you getting back with your replies. I would like to take you now into the presentations. We have invited 4 people who have a very specific role within public-private philanthropy partnerships. And to set the scene a little bit, I'm in particular happy to have you, Rob van Riet, here from the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum has launched the Gaia initiative in January in Davos, which set quite a momentum for public-private philanthropy partnerships, in particular in the area of climate and nature. And Rob, as a senior advisor to the Center for Nature and Climate at the World Economic Forum, is here to share with us some of this work and give his perspective. And I'm really happy to have you here. Rob, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Max. I hope I'm coming through loud and clear. A nod of the head. Perfect. Okay, thanks. Yeah, no, I mean, thanks to you and Anna for organizing this. And by the way, I noticed that both of you are much more skilled at saying PPPPs than I am. I'm still sort of sometimes stumbling over that term. But I just wanted to congratulate you because I was going through the participants list for this roundtable and was just so struck by the wealth of insight and experience that you were able to gather. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to say a little bit about the initiative that you mentioned, which is called Gaia, which is yet another acronym, but it stands for Giving to Amplify Earth Action. And of course, Gaia is also a term that many on this call will be familiar with. It's a new initiative by the World Economic Forum, and it is aimed at funding and growing new and existing public, private, and philanthropic partnerships. The distinct goal there is to unlock the funding and action that we need to see in this decade, and of course beyond, to tackle the climate and nature crises. Now, this might be a new initiative at the Forum, but we are well aware that, of course, the PPPP concept is not new, and that there's a wealth of experience and insights out there in terms of driving impactful PPPPs. We want to harness that as we're building this initiative, which is why this roundtable is so exciting and comes at such an opportune time. We launched Gaia, as you noted, in January at our annual meeting in Davos, with the support of many of you on this call. I'll just name a few because I saw them on the confirmed list of participants: Climate Leadership Initiative, Climate Works Foundation, IKEA Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, WAPPP, of course, Telea, Laudes, Clean Air Fund, Active Philanthropy, and many more. We had close to 50 partners across philanthropy, governments, and the private sector and academia endorsing our call to action that we launched in January. Now, why did we launch that call to action? I mean, I think both you and Anna articulated it much more eloquently than I ever could, but it's essentially those two items or those 2 points that you just raised. So on the one hand, that we are simply not seeing the speed and scale required to achieve our climate and nature goals. And we see that gap between what has to be done and what is being done widening. The gap between the finance needed for those solutions and the capital flowing is also widening. So that's on the one hand, a clear rationale, and it should evoke in all of us a sense of urgency. But the other point that you alluded to is much more positive and hopeful. It is that we've seen from experience, and we'll see some of those examples today on the roundtable, that if public, private, and philanthropic stakeholders come together in a very coordinated and targeted manner, this can really move the needle. So very excited to hear from some of the PPPPs that we're featuring with this roundtable today, some of which are unfamiliar to me, so I'm very much looking forward to learning. We are roughly seeking to advance, I would say, 4 work streams under the Gaia initiative this year. Firstly, we are building with McKinsey Sustainability an analytical framework that helps determine where public-private philanthropic partnerships can be most impactful. The idea here really is that this would serve as an analytical engine to inform philanthropy, but also public and private stakeholders, where their engagement and capital can have the most impact. Now, this framework covers a spectrum of climate and nature issues, mitigation, clearly, but also climate adaptation, which has been often forgotten in this realm. And then a number of nature areas, including freshwater consumption, biodiversity loss, forest cover loss, and the health of oceans. But we'll also, of course, consider some of the key cross-thematic and interrelated markers, such as health and livelihoods. Secondly, the second work stream we want to advance is we want to showcase existing public-private philanthropic partnerships that are either ripe for scale or that can be replicated so that additional financing can be unleashed. We also want to ideally launch a couple of pilots, pilot PPPPs in those areas where we have not seen the action that is required. So I'm thinking, for example, some of the key nature areas where we have not seen philanthropy come to the public-private table, as we have seen, for example, on mitigation. Thirdly, this is, I guess, as much as anything about building a community. Now, many of the representatives on this call today already host communities or networks or coalitions. I see some friends as well in the list, so it's very good to see sort of them coming to this roundtable. We don't want to replicate those networks. What we want to do is we want to plug in those communities with some of the public-private communities that the forum hosts to make sure that when the 3 Ps come together, the sum is greater than the parts. And then finally, the fourth work stream we want to advance is we want to tap into some of the growth markets around the world where we see giving, whether it's foundations, it's corporate philanthropy, family offices, or ultra high net worth individuals, where we see a massive transfer of wealth and philanthropies getting more active on the climate and nature agenda. This includes Asia, the Middle East, but also other regions. This is not just about making sure that that global cast of giving is diverse. That also, of course, ensures that local leaders are driving local solutions. I'll just finish with 3 concrete asks, if you'll let me. One is, I mentioned that we're building this analytical framework. We've reached out to some of the people on the call or some of your foundations or organizations to source insight and feedback as we're building that framework. It's critically important that we source diverse perspectives as we build this out. So please get in touch with me if you're interested in this framework, if you want to feed into it. Also, I will be proactive and reach out to some of you, of course, conform whatever GDPR rules are applicable here. A second concrete ask is we are building, as part of that framework, a library of successful PPPPs. We have, I think, around 35 now, mostly in the climate and nature space. We'd love to learn more from you about successful PPPPs that you've been involved in. And from the poll that Max just ran, it seems that there is some insight there. This doesn't have to be in the realm of climate and nature. It can also be in other areas, because, of course, many of those lessons are transferable across domains. And then the last sort of concrete ask is, this is ultimately not about frameworks, it's not about libraries, this is about making sure that action on the ground is unleashed and catalyzed. So to the point I made earlier, we want to use our convening power at the World Economic Forum to make sure that those PPPPs in the climate and nature space actually get off the ground, or that those that have been successful in one region could be replicated to others. Or if you have perhaps an idea for a PPPP cooking, but you're struggling with finding one of the Ps or bringing them to the table, please again reach out to us, because we'd love nothing more than to put that convening power to the benefit of those partnerships. Lastly, before I hand back to Max and Anna, as we listen to the presentations on the 3 different and fairly distinct PPPPs that the speakers will cover, we envision what Max called 3 listening lenses as we go through the presentations. So perhaps I just want to share these, but it's good to keep these in mind. The first is, how, from what you've heard, could this be replicated in your own area? So whether this is a thematic area or a geographic area. The second, what opportunities, from listening to the presentations, do you see to scale either these PPPPs that you will learn about or ones that you've been involved in? And then finally, how can you accelerate your own project by bringing in a missing P or missing Ps, plural? So I'll leave it there, many Ps. But thanks, Max and Anna, again for the opportunity. And I'm also very much looking forward to learning more about the PPPPs from the presentations. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rob. Excellent introduction and setting the scene. And I think it's good to see that you're also building on this momentum that we can all observe around the world in these kind of new partnerships. And it's not, as you said, something that's starting now. It started already a while ago, but we are learning as we're going. And the more of us are coming together in this learning process, I think the better, because the challenges are huge and we need to work together to meet them. And that's why I would like to start now with our first presentation. And just for you to know, we have 3 examples here, one at the local level, and local means really local. So we're talking here about city level, and Alex will tell us more about this in a moment. Then one at national level. So this is in Côte d'Ivoire at country scale, and then at global level. And we will listen to that also in a moment. So let us start with the local level. Alex Oprita is working for the Bucharest Community Foundation and is calling in from Bucharest. So welcome, Alex. It's great to have you.
Thanks a lot for inviting us, Max.
No, fantastic, because I think it's so important that we're not just talking high level and far away from the everyday life of people, but this is really very concrete and on the ground, what you're bringing to us here. Alex is working for the Community Foundation Bucharest and is the coordinator of the environmental platform. That's one of the most important programs for Bucharest Community Foundation that aims to build the collective impact and brings together public, private, and philanthropy at local level. And I leave it to you to explain a little bit more what is this about, and happy to have you. Over to you.
Thank you, Max. Thanks for inviting us in your community, and it's a pleasure to meet you all, guys. I'm working for the Community Foundation Bucharest. We are a grant-giving organization, as most of community foundations are. We are 11 years old and financed more than 700 projects, and we funded more than 4 million euros. What we've noticed through time is that although we managed to have funded successful projects, they're like tiny islands of good in a sea of problems. And when you're referring to environmental issues, the complexity is quite big. And there's none of the actors in Bucharest, of the stakeholders, neither the city hall, the civil society, or the companies, don't manage to solve these issues by itself. Usually it's because they don't cooperate, and also because the magnitude of the problems is quite big. So we decided to have a different approach through the environmental platform of Bucharest that I coordinate. We decided to make a program where, of course, we will have the grant giving layer that we always do, but apart from that, we will have a community layer. So this is what we are doing special with the environmental platform of Bucharest. We are building a community made of stakeholders that usually don't collaborate that well together traditionally, which is civil society, public administration, and companies. Us as civil society are used to advocate, especially in Bucharest, we learn very well how to put pressure and stop bad things from happening, but that's where it stopped. Usually we don't know how to do stuff together. We don't trust each other as stakeholders coming from different fields, and we're trying to change this mindset. We are doing so, but by using and working with a methodology that got developed in the US. It's called collective impact, and this methodology says that it's a framework for doing stuff together. We have to, in order to have a successful collaboration that aims to solve complex issues that none of the stakeholders can address but by itself, we have to gather 5 conditions. This is to have a backbone organization. In this case, we are the backbone organization, the Community Foundation. We are driving the process of gathering all the stakeholders together. We have to set up a common agenda to decide what are the topics where we want to work together. We have to set up a common way of measuring results. And one of the conditions when we started the platform was to gather all the data in a report so that we know where we are starting from, and we will update this report in 2024. The third condition would be to have mutual reinforcing activities between all the stakeholders, so that at the end of the day we don't all end up doing the same stuff, the same thing, but it's more, if you visualize it, it's more like building a wall where all the stakeholders put a tiny brick in the wall. They don't all put with the same hand the same brick, but we have to learn how to divide work, how to split work, and how to build on each other's results instead of usually fighting one against each other. Another important stuff would be to have a continuous communication between our stakeholders, and to share, of course, the results at the end. So I was telling you guys that we started last year with this platform. The first step was, of course, to work with the ones that are closer to a community foundation, which is the community, the civil society. So we ended up gathering the stakeholders from the civil society together. Then we opened up the community to people coming from public administration, city councillors, even people working in the Romanian parliament. We started dividing ourselves into work groups, mini groups, depending on our interests, have a monthly meeting where we share stuff that it's on our agenda, and the rest of the collaborations is based on working groups. Of course, this is just the start. For us, it's clear that when you tackle such complex issues such as the environmental issues are, the most important stuff is to build trust between the stakeholders. This is what we're missing, and this is a process that we won't fix in 1 year. It's a long time process. This is the thing that we're always trying to tell people, that we have to be patient. And this is what we are doing. By 2024, we are not delusional and believe that we will manage to implement a collective impact process in Bucharest, but we are trying to get ready. So we hope that in the first 3 years of our platform that we started together with ING, which I forgot somehow to say at the beginning, we're hoping that at the end of these 3 years, we will have a functional community where people from the civil society, public administrations, and companies learn how to work together. They learn which are the things that unites them, and they developed a plan, and they have some measures to track the process progress on that plan. Of course, I could keep going and keep saying stuff, or more specific stuff that we're working on Bucharest, but I think that we can do that later on in the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Alex. Indeed, we will have the opportunity to dive a little bit deeper during the Q&A session. It was really great that you shared how you work together and how you come together, and also which kind of principles you gave yourself between the different stakeholder groups. We will certainly look a bit deeper into these learnings and see how we can transfer it to other approaches in the PPPP area. Thank you. I would like to move on now to our next speaker and introduce to you Mr. Jean-Marie Delon from Côte d'Ivoire. Jean-Marie is the delivery unit coordinator for National Strategy for Sustainable Cacao in the Prime Minister's Office of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire. I'm really happy to have you here, Jean-Marie, because you are very much involved in this project, Child Learning and Education Facility, CLE, that has been running already for many years as a public-private philanthropy partnership. And while you have today the government perspective, you were before working on the industry side. So it's a very interesting perspective that you can share with us. Welcome to you, and please, you have the word.
Yes, thank you very much, Max. Just in terms of logistics, I don't know if you guys are able to see my screen. I'm trying to present. So please confirm that. Okay.
Yes, we can.
We can, but not in full mode. So if you can share just full screen.
Yes, sorry. Let me just do that quickly. Okay. Please confirm if it works.
Confirm. Yes, it works. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much for your introduction, Max. So indeed, in terms of background, I was working until 3 weeks ago, working for the private sector And in the private sector, I had been involved in structuring partnerships with the public sector. So indeed, I have a particular, if I may say, attachment to structuring of PPPs, which I personally consider as one of the most effective form of partnership to achieve lasting impacts in the topic of sustainability. I will start by a quote saying that there is an African proverb saying that if you want to go far, if you want to go quick, you go on your own. If you want to go far, you go in partnership. So this quote illustrates perfectly the ambition that the Ivorian government is pursuing through the elaboration of the National Strategy for Development of Cocoa Sector, which is the strategy that the government has adopted with the objective to address all the sustainability issues that the cocoa sector is facing. So the national strategy is conceived as an appeal to different stakeholders to work in collaboration with the government of Ivory Coast to address the sustainability issues that we are facing. And I will not repeat enough that the issues that the cocoa sector is facing are systemic issues, which pretty much require a coherent framework of action, structured collaborative action from many stakeholders with different interests in order to deliver the promise of a better future for cocoa sector. So the national strategy has three objectives in the economic sustainability, in environmental sustainability, and also in the social sustainability through the particular fight against child labor. I'm trying to move the slides. Yes. So this strategy will be deployed in the coming 3 years through the implementation of 48 reforms and projects which aims at transforming the cocoa sector. So I do not have time to go through the total slide, but I just want you to retain that through this strategy, we will be addressing economic sustainability, we will be addressing environmental sustainability, and social sustainability. One particular thing that you can retain also in the governance of the national strategy is that PPP has a very central place in the development of this strategy, and this strategy will be implementing an efficient coordination and impactful communication on results, because indeed we would want to communicate on the results that we would have achieved in collaboration with our partners. In terms of contribution to the strategy will be implemented with the financial and technical coordination of state entities from the government of Ivory Coast. We also have the support from the World Bank Agency, also support from European Union and the private sector. The CLEF project that through which we are speaking today is a wonderful illustration of what we can achieve working in collaboration. And also, I may stop here, asking you to go away from this call with retaining that the CLEF initiative is fully integrated in the national strategy and is a good illustration of what we can achieve if we work together. The CLEF Partnership Agreement is the result of the collaboration between 17 industry members in chocolate industry companies, working in collaboration with 2 foundations and working in collaboration with the government. Those different entities are collaborating together with the ambition to improve access and quality of education in Ivory Coast. Through this project, we've been able to address some of the challenges of working in PPPs, which I have identified in this slide. One of the biggest challenge in working in PPPs is finding a common denominator that brings many actors together, knowing that those actors have different institution missions and obviously different interests. It's also challenging. It can be challenging also to build trust and understanding of those actors from the start. And building on my example, sometimes in the past I was struggling to understand why the people with whom I was speaking from the public sector found it so difficult to understand my perspective. And now that I am in the perspective of the public agent, my job is to support my colleagues to understand how the private sector thinks and how the private sector operates. So it's very key as a challenge that we find a way to build trust and understanding between the actors. It can also be sometimes challenging to find a common long-term theory of change. But through the CLEF project, we've been able to address those challenges. We've been able to promote an open and transparent dialogue between stakeholders. We've been also able to establish a good governance mechanism that allows all those different stakeholders to have a say and to openly share concerns, openly share objectives, and we are together able to find a remediation plan that we are able to execute together. Most importantly, this partnership also is built on the fact that we are putting evidence at the center of all the decision making that we are making in this program.
So, thank you very much, Jean-Marie. I'm not sure if you're still here. I just see a black screen. This was really insightful. And I'm very grateful that you touched on two things that I think haven't come through enough until now. And that is one that is really about addressing systemic issues and driving systems innovation through this kind of collaboratives between public, private, and philanthropy sector. And then also in your specific case, to play this translation role between the public and the private sector. So there seems to be a need to do that in order to get along well and to really progress. So thanks a lot for this perspective from Côte d'Ivoire with this national level PPPP that's already around for quite some years. And I would like to move on now and introduce Marina Panekit from IKEA Foundation to all of you. Marina, it's fantastic to have you with us. So thank you very much for taking the time. And we are now moving from the national to the global level. And Marina Panekit is the program manager for the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, which is an initiative that is run by the IKEA Foundation together with the Rockefeller Foundation and the Bezos Earth Fund, and is an alliance of philanthropy entrepreneurs, governments in emerging and developed economies, and yeah, is trying to make a real difference when it comes to energy. But Marina, you are much better placed to explain all this to us, so over to you.
Thank you very much, Max and Anna, and thank you for organizing this indeed very interesting roundtable. The presentations so far were extremely interesting. And indeed also a logistical question from my side. Can you see my screen?
Yes, but make it full screen.
Should be better now, right?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, so my name is Marina. I joined IKEA Foundation 6 months ago. Before that, I was working at FMO, Dutch Development Bank, a public-private partnership. Actually, the other P was missing there, but a very successful one, if I may say so myself. I was hired or employed by IKEA Foundation with the primary responsibility for GIAP. I am presenting GIAP here because unfortunately nobody from the GIAP team could be here because of agenda issues. So I hope I'm representing them in a good way. GIAP was launched during COP26 by 3 anchor partners. Being Rockefeller Foundation, Bezos Earth Fund, and IKEA Foundation, all 3 of them are indeed supporting Gaia as well. And GIAP was launched to create or address systemic changes, in fact. So it is really a collective platform, an alliance with 3 anchor partners and more alliance members. I will get to that later. And geared to create a sustainable and equitable energy future for many in the world. And how does GIAP do that or try to achieve that? It's by leveraging philanthropic funding. So the 3 partners committed more than $1 billion to GIAP, which seems like an enormous amount, at least it's an enormous amount to me, but still in the context of the issue that we're trying to address with GIAP, it's very small. So leveraging, catalyzing, mobilizing, all those words are extremely important here. And what are the ambitions? The ambitions are huge. So it's about climate action, achieving 4 gigatons greenhouse gas reduction. It's about clean, stable energy access to 1 billion people. And it's about improving jobs and livelihoods with 150 million jobs to be created directly and indirectly. The alliance, as mentioned, so there are 3 anchor partners. Then there are a number of investment partners. So the way that GIAP is working with the investment partners is by cooperating on certain programs or projects, so co-investing alongside, but also by providing these investment partners with certain funds to dedicated or allocated to projects, programs in accordance with GIAP's mandate. Then there are upstream partners, which are more knowledge partners, as you can see. And the GIAP Alliance or GIAP works together with them in terms of analysis, feasibility studies, locally and globally. And there's more to it than that I've just mentioned. I should also mention that GIAP has its own organization, giap.org. At the moment, they employ a bit more than 80 people. And it is a global organization. The headquarters are in London. And there's some of the colleagues are located in the US, but there is a really full-fledged intention to have local offices. So there's already quite an office in Nairobi with around 25 people. There's an office being built in Asia, and the same applies for Latin America. Then what are we trying to address with GIAP? So we're trying to address carbon emissions as indicated, part and parcel of the ambitious targets. If we would do nothing, then 75% of global emissions would come from the GIAP's target markets, which are low and middle income countries. I'm not going to go through this slide in detail. I'm sure you know all of this by heart almost. What I do want to mention is that at this very moment, around 3.6 billion people have either no access or no reliable access to energy, which is really an issue that needs to be addressed over and above the climate action ambition that GIAP also has. Moving on to the next one. So GIAP, the way it is organized, wants to address a number of fundamental barriers that needs to be addressed to get this renewable energy ball rolling, so to say. So there's a lack of secure policies and incentives based on which investments are lagging behind in the countries that GIAP targets. There's a high cost of technology. The ones that had time to read the former slides, in some occasions for battery storage, 2 to 4 times is paid more in emerging markets than is paid for batteries in the countries that we live in. So the high cost of technology. Investor risk also ties into the lack of trust, let's say, because of lack of secure policies. There's limited capacity in terms of knowledge and experience in the countries that GIAP is active in. And there needs to be more of a push towards clean energy consumption. And the way that the Alliance tries to address this is by getting rid of fragmentation and by really coordinating and cooperating with the various partners, not only within the Alliance, but definitely also outside of the Alliance. So the focus of GWAPPP is, first of all, fossil fuel transition, getting rid of coal-fired power plants. That's easier said than done. It is on the one hand a low-hanging fruit in terms of impact, but to make that happen is quite complicated. And GWAPPP closely works with a number of governments on this. Then it's about grid-based renewables, and this is about doing things that multilaterals and DFIs cannot do. I will give you an example later. And it's about distributed renewable energy, and this here it is about scaling of predominantly mini grids and C&I, commercial and industrial type of projects. I will skip this slide because I'm sure I'm short on time. At the moment, GWAPPP focuses on 7 countries, 4 on the African continent and 3 in Asia. It's Nigeria, South Africa, DRC, and Ethiopia. Each one of those countries have their own particular problems or challenges to address. And in Asia, it's India, Indonesia, and Vietnam, and the same story applies. In this sense, GWAPPP really tries to come up with bespoke, customized solutions. And in these deep dive countries, there's a very tight connection with the governments. It's about scaling up innovative solutions, and it's about deploying risk capital, not only the philanthropy capital, but also catalyzing that commercial and otherwise capital that I just mentioned. And indeed, purposely engage with the leaders in those countries. And what is not mentioned there, but what I want to emphasize, it's not working as GWAPPP alone or the Alliance, but it's really coordinating with everybody active in those countries in the energy space. So 3 examples. In South Africa, GWAPPP was very much involved in the just transition process at government level. So converting or transitioning coal-fired power plants into clean energy. And everything that is around that, it has an impact on communities, on minds, on everybody. So creating a different type of jobs and type of training is essential. In Malawi, they're financing a 20 megawatts battery storage project, which is really key for the national grid to be able to receive intermittent power from solar and wind. And in Haiti, GWAPPP is really very much focusing on the small scale entrepreneurs to improve their livelihoods in terms of financing productive appliance use. So this all comes together in these 3 ambitions that GWAPPP has. This is a repetition, but it's so key. I really wanted to repeat this. Also want to let you know about the achievements so far. So far, in the 18 months or a bit more that GWAPPP has been around, it is effectively a startup, creating the organization, going out to the partners, identifying projects. And so far, 350 million has been committed, also to catalyze additional commitments from other parties. 40 million has already catalyzed 630 million from development capital from DFIs, MDBs, and others. And in terms of impact, 245 connections have been achieved. 25 megawatts, if that tells you anything, but in the short time frame that GWAPPP has been there, that's quite considerable. And I'm going to stop and leave it at this. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present GWAPPP here.
Marina, thank you so much for that presentation. I think that was a really interesting example of a global initiative that nonetheless works locally, well, at national levels, and also great to see some very specific examples of how this collaboration is actually playing out on the ground in terms of specific results. And many thanks to all the panelists for all your interventions there. And I'm happy to report that Jean-Marie is also back with us, which is great because I would actually like to address one of the first questions to him. So I think for me, there are a couple of common themes coming out there. One being around the time taken to build trust, especially when you have divergent interests across these different sectors and perhaps a history of not working well together, which then also links into this additional value that philanthropy can play in terms of the convening role across these different sectors. And I think all the examples today have also sort of highlighted the need for a sort of a platform or a backbone which enables collaboration to happen, which is quite different from a traditional PPP, which is almost more like a single deal. And one of the questions we had in the chat from Hannah Hanses at Philea was around the governance mechanisms of the different partnerships presenting today. So I wondered, Jean-Marie, if you're still here, if you could perhaps talk about that at the in regards to CLEF. But perhaps we've lost Jean-Marie.
Yes, thank you very much. No, I'm back. Great. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Can you just quickly repeat the question for me to be sure?
It's please. If you could tell us a little bit about the governance mechanism of CLEF and how the different partners are represented in that governance.
Okay, thanks. So as part of CLEF, we have a governance structure with a steering committee. The government at the highest level is part of the steering committee, with the Prime Minister being involved in the steering committee. Then underneath the steering committee, you have a technical committee where you have the technical ministers, and in this particular case, you would then have the Minister of Budget and the Minister of Education, because CLEF is about education. So the main actor from the government involved in the technical committee is the Minister of Education. This minister is in charge of making sure, in collaboration with CLEF, that the concrete needs of education are addressed in the relevant regions. And you would have the support of the Minister of Budget and Minister of Finance to make sure that everything related to finance, such as allocation of teachers, allocation of relevant financial resources from the state, are effectively channeled to ensure the success of this project. And also, most importantly, the steering committee is the place where all the strategic decisions are made, and the government is well aware of those decisions, so that you avoid bottlenecks that we've had in other education programs developed by industry companies in Ivory Coast, where, for instance, they would be building a school in a location that has no type of connection with the plans of the government. Then you can easily understand that if you end up by building a school where the government has no plan, it can be difficult for the government to allocate some teachers. So the idea about CLEF is making sure that we really identify where and how we want to work together, and we make sure that the government is totally onboarded and that the private sector is fully in line with the government vision.
Thank you so much, Jean-Marie. And perhaps I could bring in Alex. Does this resonate with you in terms of your experience at the city level?
It's more or less different, because we're building bottom up. Actually, we're trying to convince authorities, city halls, and the government to work with us. But usually, what we are doing, we are great on having a relationship with companies. So when we started our program in Bucharest, the environmental platform, we had as a co-creator ING Romania. We made the design of the program together, and because and we both wanted to do something that has more impact besides just granting projects and funding projects. So we realized that we need also the other actors in order to achieve more impact. So this is why we started building collective impact bottom up. Usually, when we've noticed also at the good practice example in the United States, it's built top bottom, which is like the government has an active preoccupation in going towards the communities and trying to involve them to find better solutions. We are trying to get involved with the ones who decide to make them find better solutions.
Great. Thank you, Alex. And I think that's another illustration of the added value that philanthropy can play, because you have these connections with these civil society organizations who are working locally and are able to bring them in and bring their voice in and create that bridge.
If I may step in a bit also, I also had a question in the chat. And I think this is one of the challenges when you're talking about big philanthropy. It's going into the grassroots and working with them in order to really address their needs. Because usually when you think about big solutions globally, you want to scale something, but not always what you want to scale, it's best suited for the community. There was a school example that Jean gave us, and I think this is the challenge when you don't have the right network to work with. It's like, okay, you're gathering a big plot of money, but how do you make sure that that money actually responds to the needs of the community?
Indeed. And I think often the problem is not lack of money, but actually spending it well. But we could talk for that for a lot longer. But I think we have time for one more question from Uwe regarding what the motivation is on the philanthropy side to actually get involved in PPPs. Perhaps Marina or maybe Rob would like to comment on this briefly.
Yeah, I'm new to philanthropy, so I probably don't have the best answer, but let me give it a try. In my view, coming from a development bank, I think philanthropy can play a role in, I mean, the money that philanthropy has available it is risk-free, so to say. So they can initiate certain things because there's no risk attached, at least not financially, to philanthropy. And by doing that, they can catalyze, like GWAPPP is indeed doing, other types of funding and create the trust that a certain approach or system or concept is actually working on a certain scale. So I think, yeah, philanthropy can prove scalability of concepts, and this is indeed what GWAPPP tries to do.
So I don't know if there's still time, because I see we're at past, but happy to have a crack at that as well.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll give you 10 seconds.
Well, I don't know what I can fit in 10 seconds, but no, I mean, why philanthropy gets involved, I think there are a host of reasons. I think overarching, there's a realization that is dawning on many philanthropies that the issues that they have traditionally cared about and have allocated resources to, whether it's public health or education or poverty alleviation, disaster relief, all of those are under tremendous stress because of the worsening climate and nature crisis. So I think the penny is dropping that to care about one, you should care about the other as well. But to the point that Marina made, but also the point that Alex made, there are specific things that philanthropy can do in those constructs that perhaps the other Ps, the private or the public sector, are less sort of equipped to tackle. One of those, incidentally, is, to the point of Alex, to make sure that the networks on the ground are engaged and that the process is set up driven by local stakeholders, because often the money is not flowing towards setting up those processes. And that's something that philanthropy could take on. There's much more to say on this, but I see that I'm over my 10-second limit. So
Thank you, Rob. Great intervention there. I will hand over to Max just to close us off for today.
Thank you very much, and specific thanks to the speakers joining us today, taking the time, doing the preparation, and sharing with us the insights that you have and that many of us are looking for to understand better how these public-private philanthropy partnerships work. So this is really the start of a process where we want to bring these insights together between WAPPP and TPI and with many of you. And so if you want to stay connected to this process and are not yet connected, just fill in the survey that where I put the link a moment ago into the chat. So already a few people filled in, which is really great to see. Also, I want to say that this is a work that we're doing with a global support network from Asia through Africa, Europe, Latin America, and the US and Canada. And it's fantastic to see this network coming together. So there's really momentum. And I'm really happy to see that we are moving here in a direction that is of interest and of relevance for many of us. We will have another webinar of this kind probably after the summer, when we have lifted some more of these PPPPs as part of the landscaping analysis that we are doing between TPI and WAPPP. And we'll keep you informed as we go. And then I'd like to thank you all for being here. We have now another 30 minutes in the room for more informal gathering, and which will also allow maybe Jean-Christophe and Jyoti to say a few more words about WAPPP and how WAPPP works. So just stay around. Some of the speakers also said they would stay around, and all the others, thank you very much for joining us. We will stop the recording now. Thank you.